Okay, I want to call the regular meeting of the
There's white.
Corrales Village Council to order, please. If you would, oh, hey, Bill, put your perfect timing. Put your phones on vibrate or turn them off, please, so you don't disturb anybody giving testimony or making presentations. And once you've done that, stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Councilor Miera?
He's here.
Okay. Councilor Woolman?
Here.
Councilor Knight?
Here.
Councilor Alsobrook?
I am here.
Councilor Burkett?
Here.
Councilor Murray?
Yep, I'm here.
I need an approval of the agenda, please.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Okay. So first we have approval of appointments. Is Jerry Sturmer here? So Jerry Sturmer is a reappointment to Planning and Zoning. I need a motion to approve and a second.
So moved. Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now we'll move on to the exciting part of the meeting. Miss Amy Bell is going to make presentations on interior drain planning and design. It's funded by capital outlay from the state legislature. And then follow that with an update of village properties assessment that's funded by Main Street Services Agreement. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, councilors. I'm really excited to share information with everyone tonight on both of these efforts. As Mayor said, first I'll be talking about, oh, and I guess first, Amy Bell, 104 Kepler Court, follow the rules. My name is Amy Bell. I'm a landscape architect and certified arborist with Anthropopulous. We are a landscape architecture and planning firm located in Albuquerque, and we have been the lead consultant assisting the village with the master planning effort for the interior drain. Melanie, can we put the presentation up? That would be awesome. Thank you. Okay. So next slide. We are working on the draft plan right now for the interior drain, the actual plan document. This presentation is a progress update and a summary of the draft plan recommendations that we started to present to folks at the Ride Strides and Giddy Up event during Viva Corrales. Gosh, that was a month ago already in April. So what I want to talk through this evening is just a project overview and a summary of the community engagement that we've conducted so far, balancing what we heard from community with village priorities and constraints to develop the master plan priorities, then development of the draft plan recommendations to help the village achieve those priorities and goals. And then we'll talk a little bit about what we're recommending for implementation. So next slide. What is the interior drain? Also known as the SCSI ditch, I think. It's about a 2-mile long stretch that runs through Corrales, east of Corrales Road, west of the Clear Ditch, from Valverde at the north, down to the Corrales Riverside Drain to the south. The drain was initially constructed for the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District in the 1930s to lower groundwater and to return irrigation water to the Rio Grande, because believe it or not, at that time, that area was kind of swampy and we needed to drain the water so that the land would be more arable and usable for agriculture. Because of a lowering water table, which we see on the diagram there, the drain has not functioned as intended for several decades. So who owns the interior drain? It is owned by the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District. In 2023, the MRGCD and the village entered into a joint powers agreement, which established the portion of the drain located between Station 21, which is an obscure location. It's essentially the Nichols Drain, or Spyrock, I think is the closest road, north to Station 21, essentially Valverde, and the JPA established this as the Corrales Interior Drain Preserve. The agreement transferred the management, operations, and maintenance of the preserve to the village, although MRGCD still managed that southern portion, so sort of between Nichols and the Clear Ditch. That's still under MRGCD management and continues to do so. We did look at that portion of the drain in this plan, but we can't make recommendations for the village to do anything there yet because they don't have the jurisdiction to do so. What is the purpose of this interior drain master plan? And I should give a big nod to the Corrales Interior Drain Committee that did a lot of the groundwork for the JPA and setting things up for the master planning effort that we've been able to work on. And we've been able to work with several members of that Interior Drain Committee on this effort, which has been really great to have that background. I want to be really clear that this is a master planning document. This is not design. And so for vast majority of the elements that are discussed in the recommendations, the next step would need to be designed for those elements. So things like the color of the flex bollards over here, which we'll talk about in a minute, that needs to be determined at a later date. We're not determining that level of specificity in the master planning process. So this is really, it's a guiding document. It's a framework for informed decision-making. We are identifying specific goals and then recommendations to achieve those goals, and providing a phased plan for project implementation that's realistic, all the while thinking about what is the village capacity to maintain the interior drain as is. If we propose improvements, what does that mean for management, staffing, and operational requirements? So we've had a lot of fun with our community engagement on this project. We've done weird things with my office. We do pop-up playgrounds. We do pop-up streetscapes. I've never done hay rides before. So that was pretty cool. We have had two big events, the multimodal tour and hayride, which was in October of last year, and then participation in the Ride, Strides, and Giddy Up event in April of this year. In November, we held a community conversation here at council chambers and on Zoom. And then we are planning an additional community meeting in July, which we'll talk about coming up here. We've given presentations and had conversations with 4 of the village commissions, actually 5. Tree committee is not listed on here. But we've met with the Kiwanis, the Bike Ped and Trails Commission, Equestrian Advisory Commission, and the Parks and Rec Commission to provide updates on the project and hear their feedback. The other thing that's not on here that has been extremely helpful for us in our planning projects is we have had many individual meetings with neighbors. People who live along the drain have requested to meet with us. We've gone out and met with them at their properties, looked at how the project could potentially affect them, listened to their concerns about how that could play out, and that's just been extremely helpful. So in addition to the kind of in-person engagement and conversations, we also had an initial survey where we learned how do people use the drain, what do we like about the drain, what are we concerned about. The survey was open from September of last year until January. We received 186 responses, and of those responses, 75 of those folks travel the drain daily. So we are getting responses, and then 43% live along the drain. So the responses we got were from people who experience the drain on a regular basis. They're familiar with it. And respondents let us know that they travel the drain most regularly by foot, followed by car, bike, and then horse. Okay. And then my pages got out of order. Okay, these maps show, and I know the text is way too small, but the blue dots are We asked people to locate geographically places I like along the drain. The red dots are places where I have concerns. Vast majority of people who have those positive experiences along the drain is because of they're using it for recreation, relaxation, wildlife viewing. Concerns included car traffic, the quality of the road, trash, and dry, weedy sections of the drain. Next slide. So we asked people, why do you access the drain? The highest number there, the light blue, is for recreation and relaxation, and then fitness, wildlife viewing, and then I live on the drain were the top responses there. The top priorities that respondents shared for what they would like to see improved were habitat management, maintaining the rural character and natural feeling of the drain, keeping the drain less developed, reducing traffic volume or limiting car access, and making the facility safer for pedestrians, cyclists, and horseback riders. We did hear from a few folks too who just said, please don't do anything. And I think that that's, you know, it's a really legitimate suggestion, excuse me. So, you know, we heard that, and I think tried to integrate it into our planning process as much as possible. So next slide, the priorities that we identified, and this is always, you know, because unfortunately we can't do everything that community members ask. There's always a balance, right, between what is the village capable of doing, what is, you know, best practices in terms of safety, what are the jurisdictional requirements. So the priorities that we identified, sort of balancing all of these different sort of wants, needs, hopes, desires, and limitations, were access management, enhancing safety. And in those two items, we really had to look, and we had, you know, Deputy Chief Tanya Latin as our project manager. We were looking at improving emergency access, making sure that our emergency vehicles can access these homes, and also that people living in these homes can get out, can evacuate in the you know, event of a fire or other emergency. We did a pretty extensive access inventory, understanding where people currently access their homes from the drain. We are not going to affect any folks' access to their homes from the drain within the recommendations. What we developed was specifically crafted so that if you have access to your home and you live on the drain, you will continue to have the same access to your home. And then in terms of enhancing safety, what we wanted to look at was, you know, we can't do this in all places, but places where we can, you know, there's places on the drain, right, where there's like 4 lanes where you can drive. If we think about behind the school, you know, by where Price Lane is paved there, there's like 4 lanes where cars can drive. Should they drive there? No. You know, we hear a lot of stories about the Amazon delivery guys getting stuck in the sand. And you know, there's just no need to have that many different travel lanes to get where you need to go. So a lot of this work was just really evaluating, you know, how do people use it? Where do we need to use it? Where do we need to have vehicular access? And where can we separate vehicular access from pedestrian, bicycle, and equestrian access? Because we know that when we separate those uses, it's safer. Habitat and ecological stewardship. The drain is a great opportunity for this. And we heard from a lot of community members that this is something that they really wanted to see, supporting the wildlife that we already view down there. And then maintaining the drain function is we just have to do that because the MRGCD owns the drain, and they have to maintain the drain function. So next slide. And I know this map is really hard to read, but this is our access management map. That shows the different colors or different types of access levels. And so what we're proposing is that we create a multi-use path on the west side from Hanson down to the Nichols Drain. Then look at creating what we're calling local access on the east side having no change in access. And I want to note here too, we're not proposing to pave anything. We are not even proposing to change the dirt surfacing of the roadway. I think there's opportunity for grading and making it easier to drive on, but we also heard from folks, hey, those potholes are really great because they slow people down. And I'm not going to name names, but I know people piled up big piles of dirt out there too to slow people down as well. So we wanted to think about additional, light touch ways that we could slow traffic down and limit it in places where we don't need it. So that's the purple is the local access, and then the no change to the access, we're looking at that from on the east side from La Entrada up, and it's a little muddy on the map because that section behind the school gets a little complicated. So what we're proposing is that there's no change to access on the east side from La Entrada up to Target Road. We're proposing a new crossing at Target Road because what that lets us do is block off the west side of the drain behind the school, which creates a situation where we don't have cars right up behind the school. We should note that the new school, the plans for the new school are changing the parent pickup drop-off pattern so that cars are coming in off Corrales Road and they are exiting off Corrales Road. So we are not going to be funneling parent pickup drop-off onto the drain anymore. And then we have that no access change on Price up to Dixon. With some additional opportunities for, again, being careful to provide that local access to folks who need to access their homes where we need to do that. So as far as access management, what we are proposing, and we went through a lot of ideas on this, right? Because we want to limit vehicular traffic, but we have to maintain 20 feet emergency vehicle access everywhere on both sides of the drain. And so we thought, okay, could we use gates? But if we did that, who's going to get out and open the gate? Who has the key to the gate? If it's a electronic or digital management system, is that actually going to work when we have an emergency? So the solution that we are proposing is the use of these flexible bollards, which we see over here. And the nice thing about these is you can stick them in the ground, and it's a visual barrier, but the fire truck can run that right over. And what we're proposing for the paths is that we place those bollards about 5 feet on center so that there's still enough room for a horse to get through comfortably. But there's that visual barrier and opportunity to add signage that says local access, no parking, or multi-purpose path. For the local access sections, what we're proposing is to narrow the entry at the intersection. And we're working on some diagrams, so at the community meeting and in the plan, we'll have some real clear diagrams that show what that means, and we'll see what it looks like in some of the renderings that we have. So what that does, while still maintaining a radius for trailers and RVs, is it narrows that entry point to 12 feet, which is wide enough for these vehicles to get through, but you have to slow down to enter that way. And it's a trick. We work on a lot of transportation planning projects, transportation safety projects, and that trick of just narrowing or visually narrowing can be really helpful for slowing traffic down and having folks pay attention. Is it a possibility that people in their normal cars run these things over or pull them out? Yes, it is. So I think that's a management consideration for the village in terms of having replacement bollards and monitoring and making sure that that's working. And then the signage. The other really fun part about this project, we got to work with a wildlife biologist, and we have very different habitat zones along the drain. We have the seasonally wet or sometimes all times wet zones all the way down by the clear ditch, up to the much drier sections as we go further north. And so working with the biologist, we were able to kind of identify these different zones and identify she created these kind of plant animal associations for each sections. If in the future the village does want to do any kind of interpretation or education around these, but we have worked with her to develop plant species, revegetation, seed mix information so that the different sections, the habitat restoration in those different sections of the drain will support these different types of native species. Next slide. Another important part of the habitat restoration is a slope stabilization. Pretty much consistently for the entire length of the drain, the side slopes of the drain are too steep to really support revegetation and erosion control. So, and the drain varies in width and depth pretty dramatically over the 2-mile distance. And so what we're proposing, and this is one of those examples of a place where further design needs to be done, looking at, a specific section of the drain to figure out, is this a section where we need to cut into the side traffic lanes because those are really wide and the drain is really narrow and we have that space? Or is this a situation where we want to fill in the sides? And is it a situation where we fill in the sides enough that we need to put a pipe, which is, at MRGCD request to maintain that drain function? Next slide. Again, roadway surfacing, we are not proposing to change the vehicular lanes. Those, they work as dirt, they can remain dirt. An option that the village has, and I think that this is when we kind of get into talking about phasing and what should happen first and what you can kind of wait and see, like, do we really need to do that? Do we really need to spend that money? But an option for the sections of the drain where we have vehicular traffic next to a path, or we have a situation where equestrians, bicyclists, pedestrians are using the same lane as a vehicle, we could distinguish between the bike ped equestrian path and vehicular lane by using like a color of like pressure fine.
Trail.
And so and that pressure fines are gravel, but they're not like pea gravel or like angular gravel that are going to bother horses to walk on. It's just kind of creating a little bit of a different visual color, again narrowing the lane for cars. Next slide. I'll just quickly go through the different drain study areas. We have some renderings and some sections. Once again, this is not design. These images are really meant to sort of communicate the general goal, the general look, the general feel. Next slide. So starting at the north, heading south from Valverde to Dixon, we do have another access section. The section between Dixon and Valverde, we are recommending that not include a path, just because that road is narrow and we really want to discourage cars who don't belong driving down there from driving down there, because it ends in someone's yard and it's hard to turn around and people get stuck. So, yeah, and then I think that explains sort of that section. That's an example of what the local access could look like. And I know I've heard from folks, oh, the signage, the bollards, it looks really urban. Again, that can be a design detail that's addressed. The bollards come in brown. I think, then you kind of want to weigh, like, are they visible enough for people? But there are options for having them blend into the background a little bit more. Next slide. From Dixon to Rincon is complicated because we have that section where we have those multiple drive lanes. And so what we're proposing is that Price Lane be the vehicular access. And then we have pathway on both sides of the drain or potentially in the drain. This was a really great idea that the Interior Drain Committee had because it's wide and sort of big enough there. And then looking at that new crossing at Target Road, and then looking at the, no change to the access there on the east side. Next slide. And then Rincon to La Entrada, looking at the local access on the west side, no change to access on the east side. And, again, a lot of information kind of helped us figure out what level of access where, and we were looking at where we have that no change to the access, where we're not limiting it, is where, you know, working with emergency services, there's enough people trying to get out that we felt it was important not to limit access for evacuation. And then La Entrada to Skylark, this is where we have the opportunity because on the west side, nobody uses that side to access their home. So we were able to block that whole section off as path, which is really cool. And then limit it to local access on the east side. Next slide. And here's where, you know, we've generated some ideas. You know, it would be great to have that west side continue to be path and the east side local access, but the village currently doesn't manage this section of the drain. So we don't want to recommend the village do things that you can't do. A few thoughts about implementation. We are working right now on really fleshing out the phasing and looking at costs and figuring out what makes sense to do first. We are kind of leaning towards a general approach of addressing access control first. So sort of getting people used to the idea of these different travel patterns. But again, there's nuances to that, right? Because like I think just installing the bollards and the signs could make a big difference in how people use and access the drain. And then trying to figure out, do we need to add the crusher fines later? Do we need to add additional bollards? Or is this working the way it is? Because we want to do, I think, as little as possible. And then following that with habitat restoration. And we're working right now to kind of figure out, you know, what those costs are. And I think digging into the habitat restoration a little bit more, that's not landscaping, right? This is a very sort of like ecological restoration approach where it would be revegetative seeding, working with youth corps, youth crews to potentially do the installation, do the maintenance. We had some great conversation with the village about potentially creating habitat zone steward program where we had a lot of people who live on the drain who said, you know, hey, can I do this work out in front of my yard? Can I improve this area? We have a lot of awesome volunteers in this village. So there's some opportunity there, but the intent is not to create a landscape that needs irrigation because there just aren't the resources to support that sort of thing. Funding, potentially there's a couple of great sources of funding that are not, you know, general fund. I know, you know, the village is working on a Safe Streets grant with DOT, and the bollards could potentially, you know, qualify for that type of funding. And then also the Ciudad Soil and Water Conservation District has just gotten their first windfall from their mill levy. And we have heard that it's about $6 million. And this type of restoration project would fit right into the type of work that they like to do. So we're having conversations with them about, you know, whether this might be a good initial project for them once they have that money. And then there's also Fish and Wildlife grants. And we're doing some additional research into additional funding sources because we know with these things, you know, you got to cobble it together. But we'll have more information about costs at the community meeting and in the final plan. And I think that's it. So I'd love to stand for questions. Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, first of all, Amy, thank you very much for the presentation. I know you've been working on it for a long time. The whole drain issue has been going on for a long time. Hopefully we'll come to conclusion soon. But in some of your pictures, particularly on what we have as page 20 here, is it possible to have vehicular traffic going one way, either on the east side or west side, so you don't have traffic north-south going at the same time?
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Counselor. We discussed it with Deputy Chief And I think the concern with changing, because it's two-way now, if you make it one way, people get confused in an evacuation and it can be dangerous for people. Did I get that right?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Amy. So we had that discussion. They wanted to make it one way and said, as soon as there's an evacuation, people will use whatever side. That is not how people use roads. If a road is one way and you always drive that way, and we say go the opposite, people don't do it. It's just like, think about how you go in and out of your home. If you go in the same door every time, when there's a fire alarm, what door do you go out? The same door, even if the fire is right there at that door. So that's why we say practice escape routes different ways. So we looked at that one way. There's a fire and we want people going out. We're also going to be coming in the way they're going to be going out if it's a one way. So we looked at that and we looked at the CWPP as well, Chief. And that's Community Wildfire Protection Plan. And that is a big red flag, one way in, one way out is a big red flag for wildland fire. And where's our biggest risk of large wildland fire? By the drain.
Thank you.
Question. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just had one other question, if I could, a brief one. If you go down Second Street from Alameda, Bernalillo County has done a great job with art. I didn't see any art here. We have a lot of artists in the village, sculptures, wood carvings, whatever. Is that something you're considering along the way? Or is that not part of the purview of?
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, Counselor. At the beginning, yes, I had the same thought. I thought, wow, that art program that they did there is really cool. And here's an opportunity for that here. What we really heard from folks who live on the drain and other community members was that we did not want to draw additional people to the drain. And so there was concern and opposition to public art, interestingly enough. Yeah.
Counselor Knight?
Thank you, Mayor. Great presentation. Thank you. I noticed there's a lot of vegetation in some of these pictures. How would we provide for that since there's not enough water around?
Thank you, Counselor. Great question. I think that's part of the work with the wild biologist to figure out what types of plant species can grow in that environment if we reduce the steepness of the side slopes, and really kind of change the management regimen from what MRGCD does now with the mowing to something that's more in balance with the types of plant species that want to grow there. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. For sure.
So is there going to be any water in the ditch then or no?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because the northern sections do look drier, but some of those sections is where we have the most cottonwood trees. So there's some water in there.
This is your baby.
Thank you.
Counselor
Thank you.
Osborne?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for this, Amy. Do you envision just a single method for slope stabilization along the whole length and just cut or just fill, or sort of a mix as you go along what's needed in a given segment?
Yes. But yeah,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. No, again, I think, the habitat restoration is definitely somewhere that needs more design work to really figure out what is the right application for this particular section.
Counselor Burkett?
Yep. Thank you, Amy, for doing this. Do we have traffic data from Mr. Cog? Have we ever measured traffic on those stretches of road? I mean, my hunch is 8 a.m. and 2:30, they're very, very busy. And if there happens to be a wreck on Corrales Road, they tend to get busy for the people that know that they can go that way. But it seems that with the school, there's going to be a significant decrease right off the bat. And with changing traffic patterns and potentially speed limits that may or may not exist down there right now, that would also discourage people from using it. So I mean, I think my concern of it drawing people down there is very low, but I'm wondering if we actually have any numbers to work with, or if we're just basing that on assumptions that it's going to go down.
Thank you, Counselor. Yeah, another great question. We did not base any of this on any traffic data. We did not do any traffic counts, and I don't believe that Mr. Cog has traffic data for the drain. What we based this on was really talking to people who live on the drain and hearing from them, what is the traffic like, you know, and yeah, is it a lot of cars? Is it a lot of, I mean, I think, you know, people, I think, pretty much across the board complain about the FedEx and Amazon delivery folks. I know dust is a problem for folks, you know, with people driving, on the drain, but that's what we based our, you know, assumptions on, was just hearing from people who live there.
Okay. And then one other question. It seems like this is a great opportunity if we wanted to bury a solid waste line that runs a decent length of the village in a place that could touch roads both east and west. Is that something that's been discussed at all in addition to the drain line that we would need to support drainage? I think we have water suppression that runs down that whole stretch already, correct? Or no? Okay, but so it could help potentially for suppression and also for waste removal, and I mean, maybe burying other utilities as well. I mean, at some point, I think power lines, we'd love to get those out of the wind. So how can we use it for that?
Thank you for the question, Mayor, Council. Yes, so I had when I said I would take over project management for this, I had a few very hard rules that had to be in place. Other than that, it was all community. The first one was public safety, meaning people could get in and out and they could get to their homes. We weren't changing their home and they could evacuate. Two was that there was going to be room left in there for both fire lines and future wastewater lines. And we have utility easement for the village. PNM has easement there already. We would love to see power lines below ground. They are so dangerous, and they're even more dangerous when we have tree canopy. So that is a consideration. Plan doesn't call it out because once again, it's an overarching plan, but everyone has known from the beginning. And my other one was making sure we had rules. You know, I don't want people out there at midnight meditating behind someone's house. So some rules for that, for the drain usage, kind of like we do for our parks.
What will be the latest we can meditate behind someone's house?
I think dark, sir. I used to call it midnight
Does that allow me to
meditation.
meditate?
No, yes, it does. So yeah, all of that was definitely taken into consideration, and then public input, you know, they really did not like the art.
Councilor Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Amy, for coming tonight. I was under the impression at the north end where the MRGCD was going to have a pipe that was going to be more infilled. That was going to be level. Is that not the case now?
We didn't, thank you, Counselor. We did not see any need to fill it all in, and we heard a lot of concern from folks about completely filling it in.
But you also showed a trail down in the lower portion of one. And how do you access that if you don't have, you know, trails coming up in and out by the side?
So in that section, there's yeah, some steps that come down. I mean, that is that section where there's currently sort of two trails on the side of the drain right now, and there's enough room to do that.
Or is the intent to replace culverts that are existing right now?
The only new crossing that we're proposing is there at Target Road, so that would need a culvert, but we did not evaluate the condition of existing. I mean, the drain appears to be functioning. We observed, you know, water going, although you can't see a lot of the culverts, they're buried.
Also with the MRGCD, are they going to provide risers so that they can get access to that drain pipe?
I don't know the answer to that, but we can look into
Well, you
it.
may want to consider, because if you have vegetation going down and it gets into that drain pipe and it doesn't function, they're gonna have to have a way to clean it out without ripping everything apart. So you may want to consider that. Also, the other thing I'm wondering about too is, after this is all said and done, say we get everything nice and pretty, everything, how much is it going to cost the village to maintain this? And how many staff are we going to have in order to keep this up?
Great question. And I think that's been at front of mind for us for the whole project, because we know Parks and Rec staff is already maintaining a pool, pickleball courts, soccer fields, a couple other parks. They're doing a lot with very limited resources. And so we really wanted to be careful not to add to that. And I think that's where, you know, there's some additional work that needs to be done to figure out partnerships with youth crews, and with, you know, this idea of like a habitat zone steward program to maintain those sections. And I think, you know, the village is, you know, I think responsible in that I don't believe that the village would move forward with, okay, we're gonna restore this huge section of the drain if we don't have a plan for taking care of it.
Right. So, and then going back to one of the slides you had where you had data points along the interior drain, both pros and cons. You had some data points that were off the lateral. What were those about anyway?
Human error, user error. So those were responses from the public. So they could drop points wherever they wanted to. We didn't have any control over that.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure. Anyone else? Yes, Bill?
Just a quick question. Do we know when we're going to have some concrete movement on this? You talked about this is an overall concept, and then you go to design. So what's the time frame from where you are to where they are? We actually start work on the drain.
That is always the question, isn't it? So right now, no implementation is funded. So timing of any kind of implementation would depend on funding being available for that implementation. I have, you know, in our initial look at what would it take to install just the bollards and signage, we're looking at like $60,000 to $80,000. It's really not very expensive. You know, I'm meeting with a contractor who does the habitat restoration later this week to really try to understand what would that cost, you know, given the different scenarios of cut, fill, you know, different habitats. But we're hoping to have some more information on that soon.
And when do you think it moves to the design phase of this?
Counselor, there's no, this money is, we have $1,500 left in funding. That's it. So there is no funding for,
That's from the original
Past this.
150,000.
that's from the original 150,000, correct? There is nothing, just that $1,500 that we've talked about. We had talked about doing a test project, but that's really not a lot to put in some vegetation and stuff. And I think we have another year on that $1,500 if we needed to put down some gravel or crusher fine or something like that. But there is no design
So
funding.
do we have a cost estimate for the design phase?
No, we do not yet, because the plan, once the plan's done and then we see, and we won't know until the council approves or disapproves it, we wouldn't be able to even get a cost estimate on design. Then we want to have at least that one last July 9th public input meeting, and then it comes back to council on the 22nd.
Thank you very much.
Counselor Murray?
Yeah, one more, you have to thinking about the bollards. Although I have indifference about the bollards, but I have noticed that in Albuquerque, especially if you go down Rio Grande to the Candelaria site where they have the roundabout, they raise a portion of that up so that you can drive, if you have a trailer, it can go over that. I'm a little worried that our bollards are going to take a hit and they're going to get ripped up something, and we may wind up having to buy 1,000 of them to replace over time. I'm just wondering if it would be better maybe to raise up those corners where that intersection's there. You want to narrow it down, raise it up so that it does force the traffic to, you know, go in the narrow part, but keep it open so that trailers, you know, being pulled can go over that without any problem. I saw a tractor today in the Corrales Alameda intersection. It was too long trying to make the turn onto Corrales Road, and he had to go up over onto the concrete in order to get by. Just a thought. So
I'm not familiar with that section, so I would like to go take a look and then make sure we work together to be sure that, you know, emergency vehicles could still.
well, even take a look at the Corrales Alameda intersection there by the bank, because there's a triangle, because the road comes from the east and it turns north. And it is, if you look at it, it is not straight up curb. It is a smooth.
Oh, it's a roll curb.
roll
Yeah,
curb.
yeah.
So I'm just thinking that maybe that might be more cost effective in the long run, is to, you know, to do something like that rather than the bollards. But I guess just a comment.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, I guess you can go on to the next one.
If I may first though, Mayor, I did want to let everybody know, we do have a flyer up on the wall and I have some more if anyone wants to take them with them, but we do have the community meeting coming up on July 9th at 5:30 here in council chambers and on Zoom. We have a Zoom link if you want to join remotely. And then we are planning for the council hearing and adoption of the plan for the July 22nd council meeting. Okay. I'm gonna put on my Main Street hat now. It's an important distinction, I think, just because we did Anthropopulous did the work on the interior drain as, you know, as our design and planning firm, and we have a contract with the New Mexico Main Street program with the state that allows us to provide free technical assistance to all of the Main Street communities. And so the next project that I'm going to talk about is work that we have done with Corrales Main Street and the village and community members through that that pathway. So, and this is an update on what we were calling the I think Village Properties Feasibility Study. This was a request, a service request that was initiated in spring of 2024. That feasibility study included a building assessment of the Wells Fargo building, a parking study, a connectivity analysis between the new properties that the village had purchased, Gonzalez, Anderson, Jones properties, and other key destinations like La Entrada Park, the soccer ball fields, rec center, and Village Hall. And it also included a best practices analysis for street and parking lot trees and buffers between the roadway and parking lots. And really that was all in response to the request from the village and from Corrales Main Street to better understand how these new properties interacted with each other, what are some of the kind of physical opportunities associated with them. And there were some other requests in that service request that have now become somewhat obsolete because of things that have happened with the ACD and the Performing Arts Center or whatever we want to, I'm going to call it the wrong thing. Just, but because of things that have happened along those lines, other parts of that request, you know, didn't make any sense anymore. We did present that feasibility analysis to council in June of last year, and received a response that there was a need to have community members be more involved. There was a group of community members that had worked on some design ideas, and so we had an opportunity to have a workshop with those community members. That was in September of last year. Really great design ideas, a lot of thought, and a lot of alignment with what we were hearing, you know, in terms of values and kind of who Corrales is in the comp plan work. But what we also heard was that the folks, the community members who'd worked on these designs did not have access to a lot of information about different village facilities. And so, you know, the design work wasn't really complete because it didn't have kind of the full picture. And so one of the recommendations that came out of that workshop was that the village conduct basically like a village property inventory. So what properties does the village have? What facilities does the village have? What is their staffing and operational situation? Sort of a snapshot of what do we have, so that then any planning processes can build off of that information in terms of what we have. And I think the other exciting opportunity with that inventory work is the ability to compare Corrales to other communities of a similar size. Because, like, for example, you know, I've worked in small communities and like nobody has a pool. It's pretty cool. We have a lot of really great resources here. But I think that doing that inventory also really helps the village understand, you know, where are we sort of applying our resources? Does that line up with, you know, sort of the community needs? And then how do we create a planning effort in response to that? So again, the way that our Main Street technical assistance works is that we respond to the Village and Corrales Main Street's request. And so as we looked back on the initial service request, we realized, this property inventory is really not included in that service request, so we need to do a new one. And what Corrales Main Street and the Village has asked us to do is that inventory and assessment of village properties. And once that information is collected, which we're thinking could take 3 to 4 months, at that point is a great time to start thinking about what kind of community engagement do we want to do around this? How do we want to share this information with the community? Because again, limited resources. We want to make sure that we're applying our resources responsibly. And we don't want to, engage community before there's really an opportunity to provide meaningful input and have meaningful interaction. And so, because that happens to us a lot. We're asked to come into communities and do community engagement, and we do, and then nothing happens for 6 months, 2 years, and that just that causes issue with trust and communication. So, and also just in terms of our capacity and Corrales Main Street's capacity, we'd like to get the inventory work done, and then look forward to, what the appropriate processes are after that. Angela, do you want to add anything?
I mean, to me, that's service specific questions.
Counselor, yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It just seems to me like this is taking so long. I went and visited with some of the architects and looked at their plans, and it looked right on to me. And it looked like all we had to do was kind of look at those plans and figure something out. So I don't know how many other municipalities you work with, but it just seems like it's taken a long time. And I wish you could meet with those architects again. I don't know how many times you've met with them, but again, I think we've all talked about that it's free, free expertises, from these wonderful people that live here, that they want to donate their time. So again, I don't know if you have more municipalities that you have to work with, or, your time is limited, but I really hope that it gets going and that you work with those architects.
Thank you. And I would really like to keep working with them as well. And to your answer, there's over 30 Main Street communities in the state, and we work with all of them. And we do have to divide those services fairly among all of those communities. And so, and we've been working with the old church, with the Historical Society on work there. So we are applying resources to the Corrales community. And I think if there is a strong, desire for more work to be done faster, there's always the option for the village to hire a consultant, right? You don't always have to use Main Street technical assistance.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor, Administrator, Counselors. I just wanted to touch on your question, Counselor Knight. I actually went back and watched the presentation from last June, 2024. And I think you raised the request, to have an official committee or capacity for basically what you're describing. And as it pertains to service requests, I think I talk about them often because they're a very valuable cost savings type of, service that having a Main Street program is really specific to. But the service requests themselves are very specific. And so I think organizing it the way you're asking, or a new service request, is something that we're always open to. But I think it has to either, come and get organized in a specific way so that it is faster, or take the information that the original one gives and then, kind of to Amy's point, decide what direction do we want to, put funding towards potentially. Is it something that, we would want to go and get a private contractor for? And, the original information set that was given is valuable to a certain point, but then what, right? And so I think that's where understanding what the service requests do, and the potential and that they exist, and then where do we want to go from the basically information that's given to us through those free technical assistance. So
does the service request does it look at the design then, or does it offer money because of Main Street, or how does the money work with that?
Yeah, so actually, I think Counselor Mayor, you were the one that requested the original. And it was and help me if I, miss anything, but I believe the original request was to get a set of information that looks at the potential best uses of the properties that were sort of recently acquired at that time. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah, so
and the new ones that seem to have been coming on.
yes, and it was because I think at that moment, things were being acquired and that felt like, okay, we need to just look at everything we have and sort of get a sense of that. And then the feasibility study gave the information that was fairly foundational, but didn't really say, and now these are recommendations. And that was, I think, some of the questions that we got that, okay, well, you've shown us this amount, but there was probably more, I think, that was of interest. And so, and to your question, Counselor Knight, there have been some really good ideas presented. I think, do we look at those, look at the one that were part of the service request, and then, decide how do we actually want to move forward with some of these, pieces of information that are really good and could be very valuable, but how do we put it all together and what do we actually want to know? A new service request is a potential, or is it something that would be a private contracting situation that's desirable?
Councilor Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. So Amy, the 800-pound gorilla in all this is New Mexico DOT, because our relationship with them kind of seems to be, a little iffy. So how is Main Street's relationship with DOT and other communities? I mean, do you get cooperation from DOT? Because we don't seem to be getting any, because one of the things that Main Street has worked on is the pedestrian access route, which we had a meeting last September. Everything looked nice and rosy, and then we've heard nothing. And anyway, so what's Main Street's relationship with DOT and other communities?
Thank you, Counselor. It varies, typically by district, because you're the way that, DOT works is they have their different districts, and the districts are responsible. The districts own the roads and are responsible for maintaining them. And so that district engineer is the one who has the say about whether we can do this or not on this road. And I know that, and I always get the numbers mixed up, but the district engineer here, I think she stepped down from her position like a year or so ago. And so there's been turnover there. I'm not gonna lie, communication with DOT districts is extremely frustrating. The Economic Development Department is in the state, DOT is a state agency. There's not always the best communication there. We do try really hard to help communities communicate with their district engineer. And we do a lot of work actually with the planning and environmental bureaus, but their communication internally is not all that awesome either. So, I think sometimes we have better luck in communities when we have the municipal staff working with the district engineer. We sometimes the DOT needs to hear from community members to pay attention. I don't know about, the pedestrian access route here is tough.
Yeah, so is the plan then to integrate the pedestrian access route into your assessment of the properties then?
I think we have to, as part of the inventory and assessment, include information on planned facilities. Yeah.
At the meeting that you're describing in September, I think one of the benefits of the feasibility study, or things that was positive that came out of it, was knowing the amount of potential parking. Do you remember when Nancy asked us that and she said, yeah, it's actually, that's one thing we just want to have as a piece of information. And so we submitted everything I think that we were asked to do. And then, like you said, haven't heard back. And I think it's probably something that we just don't know or understand on the inside. That there was either somebody new that was hired possibly above our district engineer, but we don't really know. And I think it's not uncommon, but here it seems particularly challenging.
Well, I mean, yeah, I know DOT wants us to accept
Yeah.
the road, then they say, well, you can do anything you want with
Yeah.
it.
I know.
But, it's an expensive proposition too. All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Waldman?
Yeah, so looking through your report, there, we got, a lot of the flip charts seem to have the exact wordage as the, comp plan, the ACD plan, the community center. We're talking about defined buildings here. We're not talking about like the interior drain, which is a whole new concept. There are defined properties. You've had the benefit of working with some of the village architects volunteering their time. And as Councilor Knight indicated, I think it's time we move forward, have some concrete plans for all the properties we've acquired, rather than have them sitting idle, that we put the best use to it. So can you give us some timeframe, just once again, as to where we are, what your next steps are, and where we can see some kind of a concrete plan?
Thank you, Counselor. So we're estimating 3 to 4 months for the inventory. As
Can I just interrupt for a minute? Why does it take so long? We know what the properties are. We know what the parameters of each property
it
is.
has to do with our capacity, and we are also working with the property redevelopment specialist with New Mexico Main Street. It could go faster. I know, Chief let us know that the village has a lot of this, information, asset information already, and it may just be like a very simple process of consolidating all of it. But I don't know that yet, and I don't want to promise it's going to take a month if it's not. And I think the other important thing in terms of the plan and timing for a plan, again, is that as a New Mexico Main Street revitalization specialist, I can only work on things that the village and Corrales Main Street ask us to do through a service request. And so I can't predict how long it would take to get to a plan.
What I would feel like that's the key is if this is going to be a brand new service request, it's an opportunity to say, this is exactly what we're looking for. And is it something that's within the capacity, amongst the village, New Mexico Main Street and us to say yes to that? Or is it something that, seriously would be considered to be a private contracting situation? It depends on, I think, the specific information that we're looking for.
Well, I would just suggest that probably Administrator Curry has in his back pocket all the appraisals for every property that you're going to look at, in addition to plans that have already been drawn up for this parking lot area. So it's a question of just, pulling all that information together that already exists, and then moving, and how you link those.
Yeah, and I think if there were to be, like you're saying, okay, we've got this information, we have the plans and some of the ideas from the local group, and then some other stuff. How do we want to put all of that together? And then what exactly do we want to come up with?
Yeah.
And then I think we're always open to saying, is this a service request that we could accomplish, or is it beyond the scope of the technical assistance that we have available to us? But I think that's sort of in my mind where we would need to define what is it, and then is it something that we can actually provide, or is it something that, you want to seek to spend money on versus taking advantage of the technical assistance through New Mexico Main Street?
You're planning another public meeting for interior drain. Are you planning one for the concept of the village, the properties that you're talking about? A public meeting? You're not planning a
I
public meeting?
think that would be part of the new service request. Once we define what it would be, see if it's something that could be approved. But I would say, if we look at everything that we already have, that information set, combine them both and say, all right, exactly what are we looking for from here? Kind of based on your original request, the ideas and the meetings we have had and been able to spend time with the local group. How could we put that all together so it's not a separate thing from the larger inventory assessment? It's the really specific properties that you guys want to look for.
The only thing I would suggest in terms of transparency
Yeah.
is that the, as Amy mentioned, whatever we call it, Performing Arts Center, whatever, had multiple meetings. Comp Plan had multiple meetings with the public. And I would suggest that you're working with specific groups, but that's not the community. And I think the community should have an opportunity to have some input on the whole concept as well.
Yeah, and we don't obviously object to that in any way. And I think it would just be what are we seeking to ask everybody before we, try to accomplish that?
Thank you.
Councilor Mier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think as we're listening to this, as at least I'm listening to this, we get into like a real word salad kind of situation, this one and that one, and determine out whether or not it's a consultant that I heard you speak about at the beginning. And then we move that quickly over to the inventory, which is, that we really need. We need to know not only the inventory, place but exactly what that inventory says that we can do with that particular piece of property. We can irrigate it. No, this one we cannot irrigate. We can irrigate with that water, but cannot irrigate it with the water that's on it. I mean, that's that kind of inventory that I think that needs to be done. And I'm glad you're doing that. And the reason I brought up the word salad is because we also talk about the consultant, but at the bottom line, everything that I've heard has been generalized, and that's good, is the plan that we don't have. And so that brings in another word consultant. I mean, a word salad, a planner. And so a planner that belongs to us here. And so we can come back and try to do this one piece at a time. And, that's understandable. The neighborhood sees what we're doing. But we also have to have a planner that belongs to us. And I think we've talked about this before, and we talked about putting that money in to do that, for an extended period of time, not for a month or two, not for a project, but for the plan for the village, utilizing all these facilities. And I think it's obvious some of the stuff that we've made mistakes on, just put a bathroom in. It's a good place to put the bathroom there, but how do we connect it to the other piece of property that's just down the road? That needs a bathroom there too. And how are we going to connect them together? But the planner, I think you talks about a long range plan, and then we can come back in and add money to that planning of the planner that comes along. Do you see the need for that planner as a word? Because consultant, because I like the word consultant, but the consultant belongs to us for a brief period of time, doesn't even live here maybe, but a planner is somebody that really, is part of it. Do you see the need for that for our village?
I wish every community in this state had a planner, but unfortunately, resources don't always allow for it, and so I guess, sure, that would be great, but can the village afford to do that? Does it make sense from a staffing and operational standpoint? I don't know enough about the inner workings to really say, one way or the other. I mean, the village has a current planning, the site plan, development review. But I think, what you're saying is like a long range or community planner. So I think having a planner is really very helpful, but whether or not it's realistic, I don't know.
Okay, I won't belabor the point, but just can you differentiate between that and the consultant that you brought up real quick? And that's where I was trying to differentiate between that, because the consultant is for the one little issue at the present time, as opposed to maybe two or three that are going to be merged together with the same amount of monies. I'm
not sure that I understand the question entirely, but I'll try to just sort of back up and clarify, our role, Anthropopulus's role in this work is as a New Mexico Main Street revitalization specialist. So we're asked to come in and provide technical assistance, which is at no cost to the village, right? And when I mentioned Jessica Roybal, who's going to be helping with the inventory, she is another revitalization specialist. So we're one of 9 RSs who provide different types of technical assistance, whether it's architecture, property redevelopment, economic vitality, promotion, things like that. We can only provide that technical assistance up to a certain dollar amount, again, because we are providing technical assistance to 30+ Main Street communities all over the state, and we need to be fair. And we also, the state doesn't want to create a situation where there's an unfair advantage for a revitalization specialist to get like all of the work in a community, right? So it needs to be open to other landscape architecture and planning firms who, want to work in Corrales. And so that would be the point where we'd have to say, okay, what does the village and Main Street want in this plan? Is that something that we can provide through technical assistance, or is that dollar amount too high? And that needs to be something where the village hires another landscape architecture or planning firm. Does that?
I
make
think,
sense?
I know, I think that helped, at least
Okay.
me a lot,
Okay.
an awful lot, because I will end here, Mr. Mayor. And that is that service request, because, you know, you do things on the service request and it makes sense, because that's the way in which you function with the state. But it's also, the service request is almost like we made them, our decision up, this is what we want to do and how do we move in that direction? And I'm worried there's my 2 or 3, maybe 5 different things going on at one time with these nice pieces of property that we don't want to leave someone behind, some property behind, not some property behind, because we didn't talk about how they all work together, united. And so therefore, we made a mistake when we did that service request. We probably should have done 2, 3, or 4 or 5 things. That's where the planner comes in. So thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Knight.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, our village council voted down the arts and cultural district. Does that have anything to do with the timeline? If we would have passed that, it would be, you know, the Main Street or your organization, you know, have different viewpoints of people who pass those arts and cultural districts versus the ones that don't. That doesn't make any difference.
No, there's no, Counselor, there's no bias. I think that the only effect that it would have had on the timeline was that the initial service request did ask that the feasibility study sort of work with the recommendations of the Arts and Cultural District Plan, and with that not being passed, that was where it was sort of hard to follow through with some of the pieces of the initial service request, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think there were a few things in the original feasibility study that just are not on the table anymore. I think was what the reference was. It doesn't have an impact, like whether or not that designation existed or not, wouldn't have an impact at all on this service request because it's different. It's a totally separate thing. I think what maybe gives clarity is the scope of the work able to be achieved in that original one? And it's no, I think, based on exactly what you're asking for. And I don't even know that a new one would be, but I think that's where we need some definition and exactly knowing what we have, what are we hoping to learn based on just those specific properties, not even the larger inventory assessment. I think they're 2 separate things. So, yeah.
Counselor Alsabrook.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 2 things. One, listening to Councilor Mieta and Councilor Waldman, I think we do need to have a much stronger discussion about an Office of Planning here in the village, even if it's just a half FTE. We just approved the largest budget this village has ever seen. I think we can find room for half an FTE somewhere to do something that's this critical of a function. Set that aside. That's a discussion for another day. The main point I have here right now is, do we want to let Ms. Bell finish her presentation?
It's a good point.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Mayor. I was done, so.
Okay.
I'm good.
It's reasonably succinct and it's easy to understand. So, okay, if I may just have one more.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. The precepts listed are very interesting. Some of them are concerning. Some of them I think are quite apparent. 4 of the 11 items are about parking. That was a bit of a surprise to me. 2 of them talk about growth. I mean, we know that's a trigger word for a fall trap that will trap bugs and critters and people and lives. So that's something to discuss further. The one that struck me probably most was to group similar uses by zone. So that sounds good. I think a lot of communities do that. It sounds good on paper. What people keep telling me about Corrales, what they like, our charm, is how eclectic we are, and use a very old school word, we're funky. It's because we have a restaurant next to a house, next to a business, next to a farm. It's not because come over here and look at our farm section, and you can get on a trolley or ride your bike and come over here, and here's our administrative and recreational section. It's like, that's not how we work. That's not what we're about. We're about organic interleaved growth. So some of these precepts I find a little bit disturbing that we might come up with a plan that tries to incorporate actions based on those.
Yeah, and I think, thank you, Counselor. So the precepts were developed by the community
Yep,
group.
yep,
Right,
I'm all-
and, I think that, to, previous points made, it is important that there is larger community engagement around it. I think that there's some really great points made in those precepts and some interesting ideas that need to be followed down, right? Which means that it can't be a planning process that's done, maybe in just a couple of months. It's a bigger question, and in this community, we have a very intelligent, very engaged, very involved community, and that is a really fantastic thing. But it also can make these processes take a lot longer because it's hard to reach consensus, right?
Yep, I agree. Thank you.
Councilor Burkett?
Thank you, Mayor. So I only had two random thoughts, but now I have a third one after listening to Councilor Alsobrook. I do think, as far as the funkiness of the village, I like all of that, but I think when we are looking at village properties and functional use of the village, I certainly don't want to send someone 3 streets over from planning and zoning to the administrative office to get a permit. I think functionally within the village capacity, I think we should make it convenient and we should put things together. But everything else, I agree with you. I like the randomness. Councilor Miera's thoughts on what we need as far as an inventory, I think, is the critical piece of this. I think we need to know all of our properties. We need to know what the properties of those properties are, what their utility values are, what parking they have, what connectivity they have to the other properties, and ease of access for people. And then I find myself confused about, like, we want to speed this up, but we also want to engage the community. We just spent like 2.5 years doing a comprehensive plan. We have 80 pages of what the community thinks are gaps in what we need in the village right now. I think we have a document to tell us what we need in facilities. We just need to know what facilities we have and how we can use what we currently have, hopefully, to meet those gaps, eliminate any redundancies that potentially exist, make sure they're easy to use. But I think we do not want this to turn into another 2-year project. We don't want to have 2 multi-use facility planning committees. We don't want it to turn into 16 different meetings with every possible focus group. We just spent 2 years doing a very comprehensive plan that tells us exactly what we need to know to do with these properties.
Councilor Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. So getting back to the service request, how much is the current service request worth right now? And, or how much more can we spend on it?
For the inventory
Yes.
and, I mean, and this is hard because we do have Jessica Roybal, who has an architecture background, who would be doing the inventory and assessment of the buildings. While as a landscape architect, we would be looking at site and connectivity. I might request that we could get back to you with the answer on
I
that.
guess the other question would be, if we were to go with Councilor Miera's request that we have a new service request, how much money are we talking about then? Because I mean, somewhere this has got to fit in the budget, and I'm just not, we're getting ready to approve the budget here in a couple of weeks. I just want to make sure that we, wherever these funds are going to come magically out of the cloud, we've got some.
So are you asking what the value would be of a service request through New Mexico Main Street, or what it
A
would
new
be?
service request that like maybe Councilor Miera was alluding to.
Sure. So I think we'd have to know probably what was closed out on the original one, but with the definition of exactly what information is being sought, we could get estimates, probably private, and then also look at what the time frame would be and how much it would be worth through New Mexico Main Street's technical assistance specialist. And even if we could accomplish it, if that makes sense. I think when we say it's no cost to the village, it's because we have an accredited program. That service request is paid for then by New Mexico Main Street for the municipality that asks for it. So the alternative would have been like outsourcing that and then approving to pay for it, the information set that already exists. And I think to move forward, the pathway would be get 3 different quotes or how many for, if it were to go to an RFP process, but then we could also figure out with the defined amount of information, what the service request would be valued at. Does that make sense?
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
So Amy, can I have I just want to ask, you remember when Rhea Sena was here and she went through the old bank and so told us some of the things that we could do for it or how we could renovate it and fix it up? Didn't you guys put together a plan for the Hector Gonzalez property and a pathway and a green space and a connection to the library and then potentially a connection down to the Anderson property? But it also included a pedestrian access route as well as what we sort of in a tongue-in-cheek way talked about a shoulder enhancement and even moving the growers market and using the parking area, because that's some of what is discussed by this group that you have. Didn't we do that many months ago?
Thank you, Mayor. Very diagrammatically. So I would hesitate to call it a plan. It really was, which is why we called it a feasibility analysis, because it was looking at, what is possible, how might we fit these different uses in these spaces? How might we fit these things together?
Because one of the questions that I recall Rick talking about was trying to connect all the properties, provide pathways for people to walk on of some distance, provide open space, provide for agriculture, which all of which is in the process of being done, and also parking. Those were issues that were brought up in the comprehensive plan. So I just wondered where does that count in the deal? Because that's sort of been left behind I haven't seen any more done with that. And maybe that's kind of out of the scope.
I mean, I guess I would hope we were not done with it, because I think it was valuable research that was done that should be built upon. And I think there was a little bit of a response of dismissing that work because people saw it and said, oh, this is just parking. But there was a lot of other information that was collected and, sort of ideas that were put together. And so, I would hope that any future planning process related to those properties or connecting those properties would use that as background information, at least.
Well, it didn't set up any permanent things. You could always change later as you were funded better or as you had better designs in mind. But the idea was it was provided in the center of the village, open space, access, pathways, trails, whatever you want to call them, as well as a more secure area for our growers market potentially. And also, as I recall, you telling me every 7 parking places or something, we had to put in a tree.
Best practices.
Yeah.
So
I think that's okay. So it would improve it would buffer and it would also improve the canopy of the village. Of course, we'd bury all the power lines, for Anthony. I'm jesting. Okay. I mean, we would do that, but anyway, I just thought that was a very good start and then nothing ever seemed to come from that. Okay. Were you raising your hand?
No, stretching.
Okay. So anything else? Amy,
Thank you.
thank you very much. All right. Mr. Administrator, it's time for your report.
Thank you, Mayor. It's brief. Tanya, please.
Thank you, Mayor, Council Administrator Curry. Chief said for me to be really quick. So I'm going to go really slow.
I vote aye.
So COVID still seems to be kind of on a downward trend, but there's usually a summer uptick. New York City seems to already be getting that summer uptick. The new variant that the World Health Organization is watching is NB 1.8.1. Maybe a little more contagious, doesn't seem to be more severe. However, it's causing a lot more gastrointestinal problems. So they're saying really watch out for not only the head cold, the respiratory, the body aches, maybe a fever. Remember, only like 30% of COVID has a fever. Add in the GI problems and you may actually have COVID with the new variants coming out. Measles, we're still at 81 cases in New Mexico. However, wastewater data just picked up measles in the wastewater today or June 3rd, but it was released today in Roswell. So they're waiting for some cases there. The New Mexico Department of Health reissued their health advisory notice today, making sure that if you have an infant 6 months to a year, which is usually before we vaccinate based on when an infant can actually retain immunity, that if you live in the counties in New Mexico that have it, which includes Sandoval County, that infant should be vaccinated between 6 months and a year, and then follow the schedule and get 2 more vaccines afterwards. If you are like me and born in the late 1960s, you probably only had 1 measles vaccine. You probably need a second one. Get with your healthcare provider or get a blood test or titer. If you don't know if you had measles, if you're older than that, you can also do the same. Measles can have lifelong impacts, and it's a very preventable disease. And remember, we're not only protecting ourselves, we're protecting people who can't be vaccinated or who are going through chemotherapy or bone marrow transplants who may not have immunity. Not a lot on bird flu and not a lot of data out there right now. So I'm really having to get a lot of my data from other sources. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, sir. Councilor Murray.
Thank you. Tanya, with the dispersal of the vaccine committee, advisory committee, nationally, what's the impact on vaccines coming up?
That's a really good question. The mayor and I had a conversation on that earlier. I don't know the answer to that. I wish I did. I'm gonna cross my fingers that vaccines that we know are safe and good are still gonna be out there. There was a big press thing where COVID vaccines were not going to be recommended for people who are healthy between 6 months and 65 years old. However, CDC, if you went to their website, actually said, unless recommended by a doctor. So you could still walk into a pharmacist and say, hey, it says my doctor recommended it. So I don't know how far that's going to go. So I'm going to be doing a lot of CIDRAP, which is out of Montana, which is Dr. Michael Osterholm, who's been a epidemiologist for years. And Montana, that area is like, they've stepped up and they're doing a vaccine guidance. He worked on vaccine stuff under multiple presidents. So I'm really watching that, and I'm going to be looking at other health organizations, and I hope it's really not going to change. I'm really hoping that they're just, if you're a physician, in my mind, it's hard to say don't do something, don't follow science.
So one of the things that could happen that was brought up this evening is that if the committee that doesn't exist is replaced with people who don't believe in vaccines and they don't recommend certain vaccines, then the insurance companies may not pay for them.
Right.
Even if your own doctor says, oh, no, this is a good thing for you in your situation. So it could be a real problem for those people who are marginal with regard to being able to afford healthcare.
Yeah, I'm not exactly confident in that. RFK says that there's a bias in this committee when it's made up of independent.
Oh, no, there'll be a bias. You don't have to fret about that. They're going to all be non-vaxxers.
Okay.
No, and Mayor, you're completely correct on that. The CDC recommendation, now there's a safety net. The CDC recommendation says if it's on that CDC list, then insurance companies are supposed to follow it. That's why I found it very interesting that CDC, even though they announced that it wasn't recommended, put a little note there, which means insurance companies still had to do it. In a lot of states, including New Mexico, they write their own healthcare rules and say that you will follow. So I'm hoping that at least New Mexico will fall back and say, we're going to have to pass some legislation that says we have a really strong Department of Health. I mean, one of their leaders lives in the village right now, and has for years, comes out and writes some of those recommendations. So at least our healthcare. Now, if you're on some of the federal healthcare, it may change, but also healthcare systems don't want you sick.
Right.
They don't want to do a lot of things. I believe in a lot of preventative healthcare. Let's get nutritionists involved. They don't tend to want to do a lot of that, but they also don't want a lot of people with measles or polio or things they're going to have to treat you for. So hopefully the healthcare systems and the insurance companies themselves say, well, we don't want to spend 50 grand when we could have just paid 150 for a vaccine.
Does that mean that Medicare and Medicaid will still Or is that another tricky?
That's
split?
going to be another tricky one, but I think it would also depend, do you have a Part D?
Yes.
You know, do you have a supplemental plan through Press, United Healthcare, Humana, any of those that would be like, oh no, we're going to cover you?
Thank you, Mayor.
Counselor Burkett, did you have a question?
I just think the vaccinations are cheap. Insurance companies are very economically savvy, regardless of what they're told. If it's going to save them $4, they'll happily spend $3 to do it. So I think that, yeah, there's less concern as far as accessibility of vaccines and the insurance paying for them because they're going to do what's best for them financially. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be keep paying for them.
I am less secure than you are with decisions made by insurance companies.
If it makes profit, they will make that decision.
And also with administrators.
Yeah.
Oh,
Healthcare administrators.
Administrators of hospitals.
we thought you meant
Can I
Ron.
be more specific?
I know. Yeah. You looked at Ron when you said that.
No, I did not look at- Tanya looked at Ron.
The one thing I do have to say is I do worry, we have a very strong vaccine for kids program here in New Mexico where we can get, the health departments get free vaccines. I do worry that that vaccine for kids program could be impacted. I've not heard of any impacts, but I do have my feelers out to see if they think they're going to get some.
Anyone else? Counselor Meyer?
Thank you, sir. Hope that we heard the last of the salmonella because New Mexico was part of those many states, and I figured salmonella and the situation with an egg. How did it land up going through all those states? But so the bottom line question, real quickly, then is New Mexico out of it, or have we heard the last of it?
You know, I was listening to a really good podcast from AMA. I think the increase in salmonella really is based on the increase in testing we do. It's always been out there. As far as the eggs,
Buy them locally.
who knows? I mean, buy local. I mean, I have my own chickens.
Yeah.
So, you know, they were saying make sure you cook your food properly. I know some people who really like over easy eggs, but I like my stomach. So yeah,
Thank you.
I wasn't quick, Chief.
It wasn't quick at all.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you, Tanya. Appreciate it.
I apologize, Chief. I asked too many questions.
Thank you, Tanya. Steve was going to give us an update on both upper and lower Meadowlarks.
Mayor, councilors, Administrator Curry, Upper Meadowlark has been open for a while. We have some striping to do and we have a final walkthrough that we need to do. And then up on the walking path on the upper west side, the village has to put in a small retainer wall out of stack block to hold that dirt in, but that's pretty much all we have for Upper Meadowlark. Lower Meadowlark, it got finished being paved today, but they're still going to keep it shut down. They have striping, they have shouldering to do, and there's forged speed tables that will have to be put back in. So I don't know when all those are gonna come in. He didn't have a schedule. They kind of bounced it around and then last minute decided to pave Monday and Tuesday. So I'm not exactly sure when they'll come back to finish everything else up.
Counselor Woolman?
Yes, can you travel on Lower Meadowlark then?
No, not yet, not.
Because there seems to be an awful lot of traffic.
Yeah, because of the residents are
Resident.
going through and I think they weren't as concerned as far as through traffic when they weren't working because there was no forms and no curb and gutter. So they weren't as they were on the top.
Sure.
So Counselor Alsabrook.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Just a quick comment, Steve. I've gotten feedback from several residents on Upper Meadowlark. They really like having the curbs on both sides. It slows people down.
Yeah, it does. If you travel through there, it actually does make a noticeable difference.
Good. It's taken a while to get there, but yeah,
20 years.
they actually did pretty good on time, right?
Yeah, no, they did really well. Did anybody notice all the black marks as you?
Yes.
Oh, you're talking about the tires now.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, right.
Any other
Anyone
questions?
else? Steve, thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Last two things, I think everyone knows the pool is open and functioning and crowded, and the water is clear and the new filters, and so it's functioning like we hope it would, and the investment that we made in it going to last us for a number of years. The last thing is just the LGIP update, $4,038,639.
Councilor Murray.
Ms. Curry, on the pool, I mean, are we having any problems getting lifeguards this year?
No.
No,
So we're good for the season.
Yes.
Good.
we, as we mentioned, during our budget considerations, and we went ahead and went through it, we have increased the salaries, which has made us more competitive with Rio Rancho and Albuquerque.
Also, we have a really good recruiter. His name is Lynn Sieverts. Councilor Woolman.
Just a quick question for Tanya, if I could. Do we have any update on the Solcy Park money? And you can refer to your notes if you like.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. You caught me with my mouth full. I was snacking over there.
That was the plan.
So I needed to look at one thing. So I have a meeting, not tomorrow. I have a meeting Friday the 13th. To discuss the Salsy Park issues. So they put our grant in and I need to find her. Sorry, I was not prepared for this. Because I don't want to give you wrong information. We're going to discuss it because National Parks needs more. They still like our grant. They're still willing to fund our grant. However, Land Water Conservation Fund. Let's see if I can find the email. There we go. Nope. So it said we need to meet virtually. After scoring the application internally, the National Parks officer said that even though the project scope includes a trail, because that's what we use, that pathway, because to get money from them, we had to have a piece of construction, and that's the easiest thing on the outside. We need some more detailed conceptual plans showing how this new trail will be incorporated into the larger plan. He said that they will do they will assist with the design, but we'll need to look at doing some initial site development planning before they give us the funds. But it still looks like they're still confident we're going to get them. So I'm meeting with that group up there to see what kind of supports they can give us to do this, and then expand on maybe with some of the community members if they want a little more detail for the, because most of the grant was for design. It's like 125,000 to design that, and just little bitty pieces. So that's where I'm at. I'll know more on Friday.
Good, thank you.
Okay. All right. So you done? Done. Oh, okay. Well, we'll move on to Coriolanus Forum. This section is for informational purposes only, not for discussion or debate, to inform the governing body of an issue or a concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. There will be a 3-minute time limit. Melanie?
Okay. Up first is Sabine Schurter. Sabine, if you'll come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors. My name is Sabine Schurter, 47 Rincon Road. First, I would like to say a few little things about the interior drain. And first of all, I really would like to encourage the planners to make sure that this still rural part of Corrales will not turn into an urban park environment. I think there is a lot of recognition that this is a danger, so I'm not too worried, but please. One thing I did not like in the proposal presented in the councilor package were these bollards. I think they're unsightly and they make it look like an urban park. And I appreciate Councilor Murray's idea maybe to use alternative ways of regulating access. Another thing is the road surfacing. I was encouraged to hear that maybe nothing will really done in this respect. To define user lanes with crusher fines in various colors, I think that will be costly. It will be difficult to keep separate and to maintain. And maintenance will be very costly too. So I really don't know how this should work. This is going to be difficult. And also, yeah, surface selections are very important for bicyclists and horses, of course. So now I think you're aware of this. One thing that hasn't been mentioned is that with every change or even so-called improvements throughout the village, the specter of gentrification and impacts on the last remaining farmers are looming. Have potential impacts been studied? Because I talked to some farmers and they do have concerns. So that may be something to address a little bit better. Maybe it would be even a great idea to have a town hall regarding this plan, if you are so inclined. I think town halls are a great way to learn about the community, what people think, and to avoid disasters later on. So I have a little time. Another thing is, as for the feasibility study, yeah, I mean, conducting the inventory of existing buildings and facilities is very important. I think this is great. Develop a community engagement plan. Again, how about a town hall? I think people have something to say about these things too. They have concerns. It would be extremely helpful for the community to engage as many people as possible. Another concern I have is investigate the benefits of the state scenic byway designation for the village. Is this a replacement for the ACD or what? I'm just putting this question.
Thank you,
out
Sabine.
there.
That's your time.
Thank you very much.
We do have a community meeting for the interior drain July 9th to get
Yes,
the community input. Okay, up next is Bob Eichhorst. Bob, if you'll come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Bob Eichhorst from Corrales. First thing I'd like to do is apologize to council and mayor for me accusing you guys of changing the seal. It was done prior, so I still disagree with it, but you guys didn't do it, so sorry. Okay, on your conservation easements you're trying to buy, did anybody talk to the Williams property? You're trying to get an acre here, an acre there, and what in the hell good is that gonna do when you got that whole front field of the Williams? With $2 million, you probably could have got almost that whole field. But you can't just wait for somebody to apply to you. You can go talk to them. You don't have to wait for them to come up. And as far as making them pay for the appraisal, I just sold some land to Sandoval County for 27 acres. I don't pay for an appraisal. Is there a difference between buying an easement, the conservation easement, and buying the property? Because when Sandoval County wanted my property, I told them, this is the price. I'm not paying a dime. They appraised it. So I'd like that clarified sometime. And then on these properties assessment, I think you guys are looking for a panacea to take your responsibility away from trying to figure out what in the hell to do with the village. Between the mayor, the administrator, and council, you guys figure out what you want to do with the bank. You guys figure out what you want to do with stuff. If you hire a planner, how in the heck is he going to know what you guys want to do? You guys need to figure some of this stuff out on your own and discuss it in public with us instead of putting everything on a third party to magically come up with an idea that you guys approve of. You can't agree on the parking for this. God, I've been listening to this for 2 years. You can't agree on the parking design. Give me a break, guys. I've been doing construction for my whole life. You don't wait for this kind of crap. You really don't. You make up your mind, you talk to each other, you figure out what's the best way. Connectivity between everything. You got Corrales Road that connects everything. You're not going to be able to put a pathway through. You're going to buy an easement through everybody's backyard to get a path. Forget some of this do good stuff. Get down to business, and you guys come up with what you want to do with your property. If you don't like the bank, tear it down. But don't sit there making other people tell you what you can do with it. You can do whatever the heck you want to do with it. It's not their choice. It's your choice. You're just trying to pass the buck. No, the buck stops right here. You guys figure out what you want to do with it. You got a parking lot, you got a bank, you got this place. You guys have to step up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Pat McClernand. Pat, if you'll come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Pat McClernand, 2968 Corrales Road. I think it's really interesting, the conversation we've had tonight. And we've referred to the architectural work group, and I wanted to define the architectural work group. We're 7 architects and engineers, retired old farts that, not involved in the bureaucracy of service requests, just sat down, spent 90 days trying to figure out what Councilor Miera first asked, what do we want to do with our properties? So that's the background. Sarah Gerhardt, Ed Bowles, and Terry Brown, 3 of our members have been on every single planning document that you see in this village. There's a lot of institutional knowledge. There's a lot of history. We've been to every meeting, every ACE meeting, every ACD meeting that we've attended. And I think that our group is well versed in the issues. So we just sat down and tried to do some conceptual ideas. That's all we've done. One thing that we are not a substitute for a planning department. We are advisory only. We're not planners. We don't have the capabilities of a competent planning firm to do all the detail work that's required to do that. But we do have conceptual ideas, and that's all we've presented to this point, to try to get an idea. And just like Bob mentioned, it's going to take town halls and the governing body to decide what to do. That's really the effort that needs to be done. I didn't expect Bob to bring that up, but I'm glad he did. I think that's a great solution. I think we need to sit down, look at some of the conceptual ideas that we've done. We're gathering information, but we don't have the complexity of service requests. We don't have to go up and down the ladder to the state to decide whether I can talk about this or I can do that. I think my colleague in planning, we have an age difference of probably 50 years. So schedule makes a great deal more impression on me than it does on a 30-something. So I just wanted you to understand what we're doing as an architectural group. And I believe that Bob was correct. You guys need to make the decision, and you can do it in town halls. You can use our material as starting point to talk about these things or not. Don't show it to anybody. Just start talking about what you guys want on each one of those pieces. And like Yogi Berra said, that'll tell you how old I am. He said, if you don't know where you're going, you're liable to end up someplace else. And I think we're someplace else. Thank you.
Okay, next is Salome Ward. Salome, if you'll come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, Salome Ward, East Meadowlark Lane, Council, Mayor, Administrator, hi. Basically, that was pretty amazing. Everyone has an opinion. My dad has a saying about that, which I can't repeat here. But to me, it seems like about planners, it might cost more upfront, but it's the kind of thing that can save a lot of money and also save a lot of mistakes in the long run, because it seems like there are a lot of things to consider. But anyway, something has been on my mind since the last council meeting, which I think was on May 27th. We heard many residents concerned about traffic, safety, and roads, and this seems to be a recurring theme. There are also a lot of contradictory facts and opinions that to me, sometimes they just don't make sense. There's residents on a specific dirt road that are worried about traffic, safety, and health issues, and are requesting very firmly that the road be paved. But all I can think is that a paved road will exacerbate the very issues that they are bringing up. The traffic will get worse, cars will drive faster, and the health issues prevalent with asphalt and their chemicals and the way it's an air pollutant, and also its heat transfer far outweigh any issues associated with a dusty road. There are too many studies to quote on this subject, and the proof is irrefutable. Not only is the process of paving an incredibly toxic project, asphalt continues to emit semi-volatile organic compounds throughout its life cycle, and that includes with the recycled stuff as well. And I realize roads are important. I'm not anti-road, but I feel like we're in a special place here in Corrales. We understand global warming now. We understand how each summer we now get more and more 100-degree days. And it just seems like a backwards move that we take our lovely rural community and start paving more and more of it. I mean, in 90-degree weather, asphalt surfaces easily reach 140 degrees. And this is a problem in Phoenix. We're not there yet, but people are getting 3rd-degree burns if they fall on their driveway. And also it absorbs the heat and then releases it throughout the course of the night. So it is still radiating even at 4 a.m. and it's detectable by thermal imaging taken from satellites. So it's a real thing. So anyway, now you know, I'm very concerned about that. I think it would really affect our picturesque village and, would negatively impact us. I know that the mayor, joking, maybe not jokingly, said that you'd be willing to consider or discuss paving all the roads or something to that effect. And I just think spending the village money for that kind of thing isn't the best use of it. And it would impact the rustic and rural characteristics of the village valued by so many Corraleños. So, yeah, that's it for now. We need to be good neighbors and also businesses that be good neighbors. Because I know that there was a bad neighbor business mentioned also at that meeting by several people. But anyway, thank you.
Okay. Up next is Fred Hashimoto. Fred, if you'll come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, Mayor, councilors. Fred Hashimoto. I live at 485 East La Entrada. This is my 3rd identical public request. That is, please post the approximately 571-page engineering preliminary design review of the wastewater project or a possible wastewater project and the state's comments about it. Over a month ago, that was to be done before your meeting, but since it was too large to include in the packet, it was to be put on the website, but that has not happened. It's a trivial thing to do. It takes about all of 5 minutes. At that meeting on May 13th, council gave mayor and the administrator signatory authority on a $2 million wastewater system design grant, but the preliminary design review report for that system was not available to you, nor to the public to read. It is still not available to you or the public. The mayor has seen it. I was glad to learn that a presentation by the Stantec engineering firm will be on some future agenda item. Yay. However, please post its PDR now. It really should have been done more than a month ago. We have been reading about the $20 million federal congressional funding request by Representative Stansberry for a sewer system that has yet to be designed or even approved by council. Did council make that request to Representative Stansberry? If not, where did such a request originate? Requests to the state are usually discussed and prioritized in public. Does this not happen for federal requests? Again, I'm not commenting on the pros and cons of any sewer system, but I and others would like to learn some details about that system, which have been reported in a document that has not been available to the council and to the public in spite of several requests over the last month. The mayor has seen it. Again, when important information has not been made publicly, and when surprising federal requests happen, local governmental transparency is questioned. So please post the engineering PDR report and the state's comments on that, and explain more about the request to Representative Stansberry for a yet-to-be-designed or council-approved sewer system. Thank you very much.
The presentation from Stan Tech will be the next meeting, the 24th. Okay, up next is, it's too large for the website to hold, so we have to figure out how to break it up into a format that that the website will accept. Sure. Okay, up next is Marty Sanchez. Marty, if you'll come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Good evening, councilors, administration. I have a couple of things that I'm curious about, and I know you all can't answer anything for me, at least not right now. But if you would keep it in the back of your mind, I would surely appreciate it. Hopefully you'll hear something or you know something that you can tell me about it. On the heels of what Fred is talking about with our water, I've had some real misgivings for a couple of years now about Ex Novo. They're my neighbors. Yeah, it's a great place to hang. I totally see why it's here. I totally understand the ramifications of the economic part of it. And I didn't have a whole lot of problem with them being here, other than the fact that with some of my other friends that I know about who don't care for a lot of noise, I'm catching a lot of that too. It's not every day. I don't care. Not a biggie. In the winter, I close my doors. But they have opened a new place in Albuquerque. Their distillery is here, or brewery, whatever it's called. I don't drink beer, don't know. But the bottom line is they're using our water. That product is leaving our village. It's being sold in Albuquerque. So who gets the gross receipts? It's not us, is it? Those are the questions I'm wondering about. Also, our water's being depleted. Oh, hold on, real fast. When they were here, just as Ex Novo, our neighbors, have to shrug that off. We all live together. But that's not quite the case now. Now I see it as though some of our major, definitely our major resource here in the village is leaving in the form of beer. And we don't get the water back, but we don't get the revenue from it either. Yes, we get whatever they generate here. And like I've seen, it's packed. We're getting some. But quite frankly, where my water comes in, I'm greedy. I want my water to stay. And if it's not going to stay, I want my village to profit from it. So I really kind of want some of these things answered. The other part was on the pavement. I'm totally opposed to paving. Totally opposed to paving. If people wanted paved roads, they shouldn't have come to the country. Thank you.
Okay, and up next is Teresa Lopez. Teresa, if you'll come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, you'll have 3 minutes.
I'm gonna stand on my toes this time. Teresa Lopez, Rupert's Lane. I have a couple of things to talk about this time, about the things that were talked about at the last meeting. I got a feeling that Ida and Dulcie and her sisters and Evelyn and my dad, Rupert, Annie Chavez are all turning in their graves right now because of what's going on here. This thing about the back ditch is, to me, crazy. They need to, my personal opinion is just clean it up, throw some flowers in there and let it grow. That's just my opinion. Leave those people and that ditch alone. But also, I thank you guys for asking for more transparency, more commitment to getting people involved in it. Amy had sent out a flyer, I guess, saying that there was going to be a meeting at the school. It wasn't there. And a lot of my friends and people that I know went to the school. I personally went like about 4 times thinking, okay, they just set up late. But it turned out Viva Corrales had it at the old gym. Then it was supposed to be at the Heritage Day thing at the old church. I'm part of the old church, the Historical Society. They said that they called at the last minute and canceled it, that they couldn't do it. That was where people were going to go through there and give opinions as to what they wanted, what they didn't want, just opinions from everybody. But I'm thankful that you brought that up about being more transparent. And that seems to be the thing lately, is the transparency. Okay, I'll go on to another thing. Pereira Road, paving it will only make cars speed faster. It will become a shortcut to Loma Larga. They'll first come up to Old Church and then Mission Valley to Loma Larga for the residents that live to the west of it in the Lomas. It's going to be once they get that going, that's going to be a shortcut because it's between Old Church and the other road on that side. I call it the Library Road or the Bar Road. And I just don't see that going through there. And what you said, Mayor, was, I'm not going to say the first part about the get shot at part, but I will say, you said we just as soon have all the roads paved. Then why did everybody move here? These roads were not paved. And I know Salome and Marty said the same thing. They came here because the way it looked. And it seems like just too sad to have it all paved up. And I don't know, I'm going 100 miles an hour here. But what made you move here in the first place? I've asked this so many times. You come here, you move here, and then as soon as you get here, you want to change things around. And that's not the way it is here. The signs for the ditch thing, for the people, we taught our kids, you look before you cross a street, any street. And these paved roads, why do we need more signs? We don't need any more signs on Corrales or anywhere else because it's starting to look like a city. What you moved here for, because you didn't want the city. Thank you.
That's everyone, Mayor. We are done.
So let's move on to Councilors Forum now. This section is for informational purposes only, not for discussion or debate, to inform the governing body of an issue or concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. A council member may respond to an issue or a concern brought up by a resident in the preceding Corrales Forum, but to remain in compliance with the Open Meeting Act, the subject will not be up for debate or discussion. Who would like to start? Councilor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. So I got I got an email from a constituent today. Apparently the bar in the La Cienega or the Las Tiendas shopping center is going to have music. And it's going to be during the evening. He's concerned about noise, so I'm going to meet with him come Thursday morning. And unfortunately, I think our experience with that is that it's going to be tough because the Albuquerque, we live outside Albuquerque. We don't have any way of convincing them to change their ways, more or less. But anyway, I'm going to meet with him and just have a discussion. Thank you.
Councilor Knight.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks again to the Corrales Police Department, the Corrales Fire Department, Parks and Rec, and the New Mexico Game and Fish. They had their 5th annual Outdoor Adventure Day on last Saturday. Lots of kids, lots of smiles, fishing, learning how to do archery. It was just a really nice event. And thanks, everybody.
Yes, sir. Councilor Burkett.
Thank you, Mayor. I also wanted to offer a thank you. I had the unfortunate experience of having to call 911 a couple days ago. And after the event and everything was settled, I was telling my kids how it felt like it went really, really quickly. And I'm like, your endorphins are going. I probably was on the phone for quite some time. I looked, it was 4 minutes from dialing to responders on scene. So congratulations. You guys do a great job. I don't know that we fully appreciate how valuable it is to have you in the village, but it is. Yep.
Councilor Miera.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to make note that I got a couple of calls from different individuals, my constituents, with regards to the Loma Larga, and I want to thank everyone that was involved in letting us know about how slippery it can be since we put the new down. And when it rains, it even gets a little bit more slippier. But not everybody was able to get it. So I think we need to continue to put that message out there. Walk the horses, be careful. Because when it rains, all it did is made it a little bit slippier. Some people, it was a slip and fall kind of situation. So it's still happening. And I guess now, quick question. I wonder when it's going to really get settled in. I told everybody, got to let it settle in, and I just don't know when or if that's going to happen because it's still real slippery.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
Is Steve still here? Perhaps Steve can help. The
Keep
issue
getting that
with
message
the
out.
heat, with the heat and the moisture, you're going to have an issue.
Right.
Mayor, councilors, it's actually, it does have some oil to it, but it's actually rubberized as well. It's not supposed to be slick. It's not, when it rains, it's not supposed to be noticeably slicker than once it's dried and cured, which it has. I mean, I'm not saying that people haven't had issues, but I drove it in the rain and I hit the brakes and I did a lot of stuff and I did not have any issues. As far as a horse goes, I can't, I'm not a horse person, so I don't know what happened there, but it didn't seem that slick when I drove it.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but just, if it's not happening, it's okay to say, be careful anyway. I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Put the word out, whoever we're doing it, continue to do it.
I
That
think
helps.
it's very appropriate to walk your horse, across asphalt. I mean, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not a sign of weakness.
Great.
Counselor Knight.
One last thing, what's going on with the coyote issue down by the Bosque? I've got some emails from that. What is our policy about coyotes and?
We right now are, I believe that basically we're monitoring them for any aggressive behavior. And as long as there's no aggressive behavior, we try to do the usual things that are in our coyote management plan. Should we have to call Wildlife Services and they trap them, they will take them out and kill them, which is of no benefit because the devil we have here is better than the devil we don't know about. And so these animals have not shown aggressive behavior. There's a lot of them. They've apparently had a very good puppy season, if you want to put it that way. And there's a lot of them out there. But they're being very carefully monitored in situations where they either brush, the underbrush, if they can identify a den, try to do the best they can to get them out, to run them off. But our animal control people, as well as the police officers, are doing everything they can to monitor the situation and be sure there's not any aggressive behavior that puts people at risk.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, well, let's move on to the consent agenda, which is basically approval of minutes from May 27th, 2025, regular council meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
And second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? New business, consideration action approval of resolution 25-18, approving an overhead power line at 545 Old Church Road. I need a motion I need a motion to approve the resolution so that we can bring it to the floor for further discussion.
So moved.
In a second.
I'll second.
And before we begin the discussion, I thought I would ask Fire Chief Anthony Martinez if he'd like to make Planning and Zoning Administrator. She's going to come up first and make some comments. I hope you've all read the resolution that follows this.
Thank you, councilors, Mayor Voss.
Ordinance. We have our ordinance in there. Yeah.
Before I turn this over to Chief Martinez, I did want to say a couple of things. In your packets is a letter that Chief and I wrote on the issue, and I'll talk about a couple of things. And then right after that is the actual ordinance itself. So the applicants requesting overhead power versus the required undergrounding are currently building a new home at 545 Old Church Road with a stated valuation of $700,000. This lot is part of a new subdivision approved in 2019. So again, Chief and I met out there at the site last week, and we did observe that while there are some older homes along Old Church Road that are served with kind of, I'll just call it sort of sporadic overhead service, this subdivision is not served by overhead. Because there are no current telephone poles near or on the property, this request would require a new pole on the east side of Old Church Road. Chief can talk a little bit about that. We think it might be in a site triangle. And then another pole on the property itself, with the lines running across the road and into the property. We also observed there's quite a few trees kind of in this area of Old Church. And I did point out in my letter that there is another 5-lot subdivision, gosh, just really close. It was platted in 2021. That particular subdivision is building out more quickly. And all new homes there are completely served by underground. I'll let Chief talk about ice storms and effects of that. But the village does have an ordinance, and it does require new communications and electrical lines be placed underground. We believe that the exceptions do not apply in this case, and for that reason are requesting denial. Thank you.
Chief, thank you for coming up.
Thank you, Mayor, Counselor, Administrator Curry. I think Planning and Zoning Administrator summed everything up. As you know, no surprise, my feeling about power lines and issues pertaining, for emergency. We are a community at risk. We have in our CWPP hazard mitigation really made an assessment of the village and trying to seek federal dollars to go underground throughout the village. In November, you guys remember, the ice storm. We dealt with emergencies pertaining to the power lines, not just on high voltage transmission lines that run parallel with Corrales Road, but service drops, which this is considered a new service drop to a residence. I did have some photographs. I don't know if Melanie could pull them up. On Old Church Road, I took a couple of photographs. So it is, an older road. There are service drops on Old Church Road. I'm sorry, they came in crooked. So this one here, I believe is a picture of the property, or no, it's a picture of a property where you can see a service drop coming across from the east side of Old Church Road into a house, and it's going right through vegetation. I did check with PNM. These service drops are the responsibility of the homeowner. So if you could pull up some of the other photos too. Thank you, Melanie. PNM is currently in Corrales. They had 10 trucks started on Monday. I think they're down to 6. They're going to start at the south end of the village and working north. I did confirm today from their vegetation management that they will not be addressing these service drops and cleaning up the vegetation. They'll be happy to coordinate with the homeowners on existing, if they're in the vegetation, to disconnect at the transformer, make it safe for the homeowner to hire, or they can, do it. There's another example of a service drop on Old Church Road coming off of a pole. It looks kind of questionable, actually, leaning. Has a transformer with the service drop, and it's also going right through vegetation. So the property in question, I think I have it on one of my photos. The proposed, that was part of the packet, is going from the east side of Old Church Road across and placing 2 new poles. One of the poles, according to PNM in this drawing, and I don't know how accurate it is, but they're looking like they're going to put a new pole right there, and it's not identified, but that's a road called Mama Road. And we currently, it's a tight road. If you put another pole there, it could obstruct us. I don't know what PNM's easement is or the line of sight on the triangle. And then directly across is the property in question. And along the road there, parallel to Old Church Road, is full of Chinese elms and vegetation. So I'm just wanted to come and thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to have the opportunity. But we're dealing with a lot of these issues throughout the village existing. And so here we have an opportunity on a new property to try to make a correction. So I'll stand for any questions.
Councilor Knight?
How many acres are there? Is it just for one home, or is this a subdivision you said?
So this was a planning and zoning subdivision. I think Lori can probably address. So it's four lots. This particular property, when they originally went to planning and zoning, correct me if I'm wrong, Lori, but the request was to have access off of Old Church, not the other access off of Entrada de los Martinez. So it's a 4-property subdivision where this property has its own access off to Old Church.
So the rest of the subdivision would be off of the other road?
Correct.
And I do believe the property owners are here if you have questions for the property owners.
So all of the homes then would be getting electricity from the poles?
I don't know
don't know the
what's
answer.
proposed on the other properties. I haven't seen any sort of permits or anything come through, but those properties would be, you know, subject to, it's a new construction, so underground utilities, but I don't know what the plans are.
Thank you.
Council Murray?
Thank you. So Chief, where would the owners have to go to get underground utilities established? Would they have to go down to an established pole, run a line down through across the road and then to the property?
I don't know the answer to that. My guess would be they'd have to go to where the main transmission line is on the east side, as indicated in the drawing, and then probably have to go underneath Old Church Road, which is, I believe, is a village-owned road. Yeah.
Yes.
So the reason I say that is we have excavation permits and we can, you know, work with the utility company to go underneath the road.
Well, obviously, I mean, underground's going to cost more, but I do agree with you, though, it needs to be done because it's, I mean, it's a safety thing and you're absolutely right, you know, where power lines run in through vegetation. And when you get a good storm, so basically if the wind's blowing 50, 60 mile an hour, it doesn't take much to get a spark going and get a fire going as well.
Yep. And Mayor, councilors, I did drive up and down Old Church, and I did see other properties where they had conduits going up the pole to indicate that there are residents on that road that have underground service of some sort going to their residence where they come up and then make the connection up a high.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
Okay, thank you.
Laurie, were you going to make a last comment? Okay. Melanie, you said the owners of the property are here?
Yes. Jolene and Henry Jaramillo.
Would you guys like to speak?
And just make sure you come up to the podium, state your name and address, and let the council know what your project
Mayor,
is about.
councilors, thank you. My name's Henry Jaramillo. We purchased a property there at 545 Old Church Road. My wife and I are both the builders of this home. This is our first home that we've built ourselves, and we are actually on a very tight budget.
Yeah.
And the costs to go underground is significantly higher than going overhead. And I understand the safety aspect of it. I work with the utility company, so I do understand that, but it really would delay us in this build. And I know it'd be kind of unsightly to see a home that's not complete. And we would like to try to get the home built, you know, in a timely manner and stay on budget. So I'm hoping that you guys would consider us cutting.
Thank you, Council. So do you own all the properties that are in the subdivision or just the front lot?
Just the front lot.
So is there any anticipation then that the existing other 2 properties or 3 properties would tie into your service and then drag, go on back into further back into the lots?
So PNM did say with the upgrade that they'll be making, that other properties in that area could benefit from that in the future.
Well, do you see why the benefit of putting it underground is so much better? Because I will tell you right now, I have underground utilities, but our main service line runs along an irrigation ditch. And in the last 2 storms that we've had, I've lost utility because of the vegetation. And I think it's imperative that our ordinances follow the best safety practices possible for the village. And I think it's better for you because if you plant trees and everything else and the vegetation grows up in a few years and you get a good storm, you could lose your house because of the overhead. So I think you're better off drawing and going underneath. I mean, yeah, it's going to cost you more, but you're going to be better served in the long run. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, guess that's it. Thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, sir.
So my understanding, are we approving this overhead? Is that the way the current resolution is written?
So the way the resolution written is positive.
Okay.
We don't write negative resolutions. That's what I was told.
If you,
So-
if you want to, if you don't want to approve the overhead power line, you would vote no on approving the resolution.
Yes, that's correct. Sorry.
Because yeah, you can't make, just like you can't make a motion in the negative, you can't write a resolution in the negative. We stay positive
Yeah,
here.
we do, don't we?
Big razor
So-
side.
Are we ready to vote?
Yeah.
How do you vote, Counselor Mira?
No.
Counselor Wallman?
No.
Counselor Knight? Counselor Alsobrook?
No.
Counselor Burkett?
No.
Counselor Murray?
No.
So the overhead line resolution fails. Okay. Next is consideration action approval of resolution 2519, notifying the Secretary of State all municipal officer positions to be filled at the next municipal officer election in November of 2025. Do I have a motion to approve resolution 2519 regarding the elections in November?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion at all? It's pretty straightforward. Yes, sir.
I just have a quick question, not related to this specific resolution, but the general concept. In the comprehensive plan, it was mentioned looking at non-districted counselor stuff. If that was a conversation we would ever want to have, what would be the timing to have that conversation? I don't assume we have the time to do it now before this election, but something I think we need to start thinking about as village is if this still serves us better than just having 6 counselors that are, I don't know how you do rank voting or some other option that's less geographically specific. And maybe this is the best option. Maybe this is what the citizens want, but I think it's something worth exploring.
How many people voted for you the last time?
The GOAT mayor got a lot more than me. I'll tell you that. So
I don't,
at least
I
one.
I don't think we have a huge, we have a good turnout, but it's not huge. I mean,
It's
It's like
not.
35% maybe or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it's like 1,800 voters total, I think, somewhere in that range. Melanie, you
20,
probably,
we had the last mayoral election, we had 2,600 people turn out to vote and it was 26% of the registered
is
voters.
that it? Okay.
Yes, but then the most recent election where it was judge and council members, we only had about 1,800 people vote.
So, I think given that situation and the fact that not many people run for office, I don't know that ranked voting is something we should even, I mean, we can talk about it, sure, but I don't think it would be, I'm not sure it'd be worth all the time and effort involved.
And you'd still have to do staggered voting where half the council would be voted in one election and then 2 years later, the other half. So
The better question I have is why not have everybody at large?
I mean, I agree. That could be,
No.
Stuart doesn't like that idea.
Well, and there's a point. There's a reason why he doesn't, because that's the reason we have districts. So we have, people feel like they have a representative.
Right.
So, it's got a plus and a minus. Yes, sir.
I do agree with Councilor Burkett. It's worth us having a conversation basically starting from scratch. It's been a good 17-year experiment since 2008 when I was first elected in that first district of the last election. And it would behoove us, it's a healthy exercise. Do we like 6 districts? Do we want 4 districts? Do we want at large? Do we want some combination? Do we still want this form of government? Do we want to inherit one of the other forms that are allowed in the Constitution for municipalities like us? And I think it's a fundamental issue, and the timing's probably right for us to do it. It's nowhere near in time for
Not the next election.
Right. All right.
But we can certainly ask, because Randy, one of your partners,
Yeah.
Ben Black,
Yeah.
he's really been involved in that for many years. So
Yes.
we might be able to have something put together where we could have perhaps Randy Van Black come and give us a discussion or presentation or something.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, be happy to ask him to do that.
Or if he could, if he would.
Yeah, as you know, Randy Van Vleck was the
Oh,
general
yeah.
counsel for the municipal league for many years.
Yeah.
So he's familiar with
He could help maybe.
issues of the different,
Yeah.
Okay.
districting, non-districted, different forms of municipal
That
government.
So we'll look into it.
Thank you.
But,
Yes, sir.
but on this particular issue, we're only saying that we're gonna have our our election on the 25, that's it, right?
yeah, we don't have time to make the change now.
No.
So this would be something that would likely have to happen after the new council members are voted and take office after
Correct.
January 1st of
We're
20.
not going to do it for 25. So November of 25, we will do a regular election. This will be 3 counselors and the mayor.
Yes.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? Counselor Murray,
Yes.
Counselor Burkett,
Yes.
Counselor Alsabrook,
Aye.
Counselor Knight, Counselor Wilson.
Aye.
Woolman, excuse me, and Counselor Meara.
Yes.
Okay. Now we move on to discussion of the ICIP rankings. Who wants to make any comments?
I have a question, Mayor.
Far away.
And it's actually probably for Melanie. For the people who did not rank everything, when we averaged out, you did the scoring, what score did the unranked items get?
So that was a little difficult. So first I tried just doing an average of the scores and just averaging it with the people who voted or ranked that. But that gave those kind of an unnaturally high.
Incentive, right.
So then I tried a 0, and again, that didn't work. So anything that was not ranked by somebody, I gave it the number 37 because there were, or 38, because there were 38 items on or 37.
Okay.
Whatever the final number was, anytime it was not ranked by a council member, it got a 37.
So on
And then
one-
that was divided by 7 people who filled out the forms.
So on one of the counselors, they only ranked the top 10. So that means number 11 got a 37,
Mhm.
as did number 37.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
of those averages, I took the
Okay.
lowest average number and that became number 1 and then went down from there.
Okay, so I mean, for the top 10, we have a pretty good representation of what everybody thought, but after that, it's the Wild West.
Yeah, but it
Little bit.
doesn't really make any difference.
Right.
It just has to be on the list.
Yeah.
What makes a difference is when we do capital outlay and then you say, we want this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many we want to take to the legislation. Usually 5 or 6 is what we put together. And so that's what's the important part. Right. This is just, if you want to call it something, it's like a wish list.
Kinda, yeah.
Okay.
You know, it doesn't mean it's going to be picked. If it's 37, it may be the first thing they look at and say, we want to do that.
Right.
Or
Yeah,
it may, or as in one year, I think it wasn't even on the list and we ended up with a batting cage.
Yeah. Yeah, with the ICIP list, when I input that, there's a whole, when you print out the form, it's an 11-page form for every single item. And so you need, costs, phasing, timelines, all kinds of information. And so that's what the legislators look at is they'll look at the ICIP list and say, okay, this is a project that could be phased. They're asking for $4 million, but phase 1 is going to be, 250,000. I'll give them the 250,000. So they don't really look at the ranking so much as just the information that goes with each one of those items.
So why do we do the rankings then?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't easy.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
it's-
it's not. It's
Yeah.
not. It's just one of those things they do ask you to rank it in the form. So instead of me just saying, oh, well, I'm just going to rank them in alphabetical order or whatever, the system does require you, well, okay, the current system requires you to rank it. They're actually, and we are in the process of beta testing the new system that's supposed to go online. Is it June 24th? Yeah. Yeah, they want the system up by June 30th and then the list is due July 11th. So they're going to make all of us clerks have less than 2 weeks to input into a brand new system that nobody's used, that's still in beta testing. So I don't know if the new system is going to have rankings or not yet. They haven't sent it.
Yes, sir. All right, so my question is, all right, so Coronado Road bubbled up to the top. I didn't put it there, but that's okay. But the question was about I think it was May 13th, we had a TBF. Steve Lesku came up, told us about Coronado Road. They applied for a proposal. And yet, when I looked at the budget, I went to May 13th budget, there was money in the TPF. I went to the budget we approved the last meeting, and there's no money in that budget. And yet we have to come up with 5% of this if we get it. And then my other question is, have we ever been turned down for a TPF that we've requested? If
Yeah,
so, why
I think we have.
Well, why did Coronado bubble to the top then? Because if we get this funding, it's going to go away. So why,
Because that one is shovel ready.
Yeah,
It's
but
designed.
all I'm saying is, it doesn't make sense why it would go to the top of the list if we're going to get the funding for it anyway.
Actually, the Coronado Road was the map. Is that correct, Steve? Or is that the one that you're getting ready to do the presentation on? Yeah, Steve is doing a presentation here, coming up in a couple of weeks.
But May
on that
13th, he
and-
presented that as a TPF.
Mhm.
So if we're going to get it, why put it number one if we're going to get the money anyway?
You don't know that you're going to get the money.
Well, I know, but then again, when I
So
looked at the
do-
budget,
Do you want to move that down to a lower rank? That's what this discussion is for.
the problem is, why did, hey, wait just a second. Why did I look at the budget that we approved at the end of May and the funding for item, I think it's 610 for the TPF? Why did it be zeroed out when we had money in there for the
Yeah,
13th?
That I don't know.
I don't know.
And what happened to that money? It was about $700,000.
Oh, I don't know. If you find it, let us know. I don't know what you're talking. I really don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, I'll send you the email.
Okay, fine enough.
To take on Stewart.
Okay, so I guess the most important question is,
excuse me.
does council,
Some commentators out there, you want to make a comment?
oh yeah, Chief had a couple of changes to the list you want to
Oh.
request.
Okay.
Mayor, council. I do apologize. So the original list that you were supposed to get should have been amended and I didn't catch it. So Angel Hill has been funded by a grant that Tanya had applied for through the New Mexico State Fire Fund. And so we are in the process of going out for bid. I believe we have some legislative money to help us to get from the tank after it's built, to build the infrastructure to get from the tank to Loma Larga, but we might still be short. So I'm respectfully asking that, I guess whatever one is ranked higher, Angel Tower be removed, but it'd be incorporated in village-wide fire suppression. That way, if we don't have enough funds to complete Angel Tower and the plumbing to get to Loma Larga, that if this is supported and carried and we're successful in getting the money, we can use some of those funds to complete the project, but also use to expand on the existing hydrant systems that we have in place, like Loma Larga to go either south or north. Now Andrews to go south or north, or down some of the village-owned cross streets. So I do apologize for that mistake.
So didn't we get $600,000 for the Angel Hill Tower?
We got $500,000 grant, and then we had some additional funds, and it's like 400,000, so a total of 900,000
And then didn't we get $1 million from the governor for the fire suppression line?
for
to
the
go down
fire
hill?
suppression line for the infrastructure to come down to build the 12
And
inch
that's why we
line.
may be a little bit short because I
Correct.
think originally we asked for 1.2.
Yeah, and every day prices are going up. So, when we actually go and execute and break ground, the costs for pipe and the contractor and everything else, I'm guessing will be up. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Thank you,
I
man.
do apologize for that. And then we added a tractor for at the last minute. It's a tracked skid steer. Those of you have seen us down in the Bosque doing fuel wood dead and down with the tractor that we have from MRDCD. When you look at a piece of equipment like that and production, how you can really clean out the Bosque a lot faster with Public Works with the dump trucks. So having two in tandem working, we can increase our productivity quite a bit.
It's just the one with the jaws. Just one with the
Yeah,
jaws?
it's one with attachments. So anyways, I know that's a huge deal for us to try to clean out our Bosque, make our community safer. But when you go down there, you could see the amount of dead and down. So this type of equipment is less impact on the soil. And the Bosque Advisory Commission supports it. So
how much does that cost?
it's like 180,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's why when I ranked it, there were 37, but on the packet, there's 38.
38, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Yes, it's good to put equipment on there because, they'll fund the equipment if they have a little bit of money left over each. They'll put it together and we can buy a piece of equipment. The big projects, you know, we can focus on them, but the odds of getting this, like the road work that's ready to go, that's better if
Yeah.
we can.
So Mayor, the problem I have is especially the last two items that for Public Works is it seems to me that we should just go ahead and bite the bullet and buy those damn things because if you wait 20 years to get a piece of equipment, it's obsolete.
Well, you know, actually, we're trying to do a lot of that, and it is being done. We haven't done that specifically, but we have done some public works equipment. And we do try to, and Anthony's done a very good job finding equipment in various places that we can purchase for either that or given to us. So I mean, everyone's always looking for a deal.
Well, I appreciate that, but I don't know why sometimes it winds up on the ICIP or the ICIP list and it sits there for years. I just want to see something. If the Public Works folks need it, let's buy it.
It's a matter of what you need first. You know, you have to balance it because you only have a limited amount of funds sometimes to work with. And although it looks like right now we're doing well, we don't know what we're going to be doing in 2 years. I mean, who knows what's going, in fact, in 3 months could crash. We don't know. Okay. Anybody have anything else they want to say about the ICIP? All right. I need a motion to go into closed executive session pursuant to provision of the New Mexico Open Meeting Act that we have adopted. NMSA 1978, Section 10-15-1H8. The Village Council may convene executive session for the discussion of purchase or of the purchase, acquisition, or disposal of real property or water rights by the public body. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are now in executive session. So I need a motion to come out of closed session pursuant to NMSA 1978, Section 10-15-1H8. We were in executive session for discussion of the purchase, acquisition, or disposal of real property or water rights by the public body. No votes were taken, no decisions were made. We
Second.
have a motion and a second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we are now in open session. What is left on our agenda are announcement of future agenda items, discussion of a noise ordinance changes on 6/24, final approval of ICIP list on 6/24, public meeting to view the interior drain plan on 7/9 at 5:30 here in the council chambers. I believe that's a Wednesday. Yes. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Approval of the final budget on July 22nd, 7/22. And there will be a presentation of the preliminary engineering report by Stantec on
6/24.
6/24.
Okay.
Anybody have anything else they want to plan?
Thank you.
Future agenda? Okay, that being the case, the business meeting is over and I adjourn it.
All right.